Hi everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. I hope that everybody who's online had a fabulous Christmas and New Year and a lovely break over the summer. And welcome to you all for joining us on this first webinar for the year. Resiliency and Wellness. Sorry, this is module 1 of 4 modules that will run during the month of February. Our presenter today is Terry McCloy, who is an international leadership facilitator. A number of you online would have already had interactions with Terry because he's presented for us last year on a couple of sessions. For those of you who do not know Terry is an internationally recognised leadership and change expert and one of the most highly acclaimed leadership facilitators globally. He has led leadership forums and retreats all over the world and is recognised for his understanding of leadership in challenging times. He has also successfully led over 15 major organisational change initiatives and has done this through a focus of people and outcomes. As a result of this experience, Terry has distilled his leadership and change expertise into the highly acclaimed Leadership Essentials program. Terry founded Future Path International over 30 years ago, and today they're the leading providers of leadership development, coaching and change management within New Zealand and APAC. The Future Path National Coaching Centre is the largest in New Zealand with over 15 coaches who work both nationally and globally. Future Path's promise is simply the best and nothing less. Terry has also been internationally recognised on a number of occasions and was awarded the CPI International Leadership Excellence Award for his contribution to change and transformation internationally. I'd now like to pass you over to Terry, and just a reminder to those of you online, if you do have any questions at all throughout the session, please pop those into the Q&A box on Slido and Terry will answer those at the end of the session. Welcome, Terry.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. Gosh, if you could really see me here in full colour, you'd see I was blushing after that introduction. So thank you very much. Yeah, I founded Future Path 30 years ago in Wellington. And today we, as Jenny said, we are the leading #1 coaching organisation in Aotearoa, New Zealand. One of the programs that we have developed is what we are going to be talking about over the next 4 sessions, which is our Ki Kaha Stay Strong seminar. It's a brilliant seminar. It's probably our most popular seminar. We've delivered that not only in New Zealand, but we've delivered it also internationally in places like South America, in Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, across Australia, up through Asia and China, the Philippines, and also India and in the UK. So the principles we're going to be talking about over the next 4 sessions around Ki Kaha Stay Strong is around resilience and wellness. And it's something that really I think should be taught in schools. It's something that is critical in our everyday lives. And I will hope that you can walk away by finding something in one of these sessions that you go, aha, that really resonates with me. I want to take it away and I want to use it. So please, if you have any questions, put it up, as Jenny said, in the chat. Very happy to answer it. Any discussions are good discussions. Any ideas that you have will be good ideas. We'd like to keep it interactive. It's a 45 plus or so session. Happy to go through to the full hour if you actually need that. And so what I'd like to do is now just talk a little bit about the 4 sessions we're going to cover. So today we're going to look at our changing world, the events that shape our lives, our purpose, resilience and its benefits. And what is resilience? The second module, the one that we'll cover next week, we'll be looking at managing stressors. So those are the things in our world that causes stress. Understanding control, which is something that, in my experience of coaching, often people don't take enough of. Reframing thinking. Now, any of you who have worked with me or know me will say that is the mantra that you continuously talk about, Terry. It's about reframing. And reframing is about challenging ourselves around why and what we do and how we need to do it differently. And there's a good reason for that. And it relates back to what we're covering today in relation to our changing world. We'll look at the transition framework, and this is a really great framework that says, this is where I am and this is where I need to go to. How do I get there? And how do I get there successfully? Module 3, this is a real personal one, and it reflects on everybody. It's really, really critical. It talks about your energy sources, your energy practices. It talks about the elements of well-being, and my favorite, gratitude practice. And that's sort of not a hippie idea. It is a really scientifically proven way to build resiliency, way to build wellness, and it's a way to actually create a life practice for you that is built around success. And in the last module, the last seminar, we're going to talk about being present. That's a really good one, because if you've ever walked down a street anywhere, as I was this morning, the amount of people walking along the street, texting on their phones or doing something on their phones is phenomenal. They're not present. They're not walking, they're not texting, they're trying to do two things. And I think the thing in our lives today, it's about being able to bring ourselves back to our present, which we'll also cover with mindfulness, with Resilience Toolkit, breath work, recognizing triggers, limiting beliefs, and then building yourself a practice that suits you. So I think those are the key things. So if anybody's got any questions about this, please let me know now. We've got a workbook for you, which Jenny kindly sent out this morning, and we'll work our way through that. As we work our way through that, I will call out the page numbers so you have an idea of where we are in the workbook. The workbook is interactive, so you can use this as a toolkit. You can go and type into it. So if you go to page 3, at the bottom of page 3, there's a great quote there by Carl Jung, which says, "I'm not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And this is a real essential element of both resilience and also wellness, but particularly of resilience. And we'll talk about that a little later today. I'm not what happened to me. I'm what I choose to become. And what happens to a lot of people that I work with, they're focused on what's happened to them as being the reason why they are who they are today. And yes, certain things do happen in people's lives that do affect them. Or the other one is that people are always looking at the future and saying, well, this could happen, so I don't want to do this. And they're being controlled by something in the future that hasn't happened, that in their opinion could happen. So focus on the present. The present is what is in front of us. And that in today's world is something we need to really work at, because there's so much happening around us. Like I mentioned a moment ago, people walking down the street on their phone, texting, and I don't do that now. I simply will not do that. If I'm walking down the street, I'm looking and observing and seeing what's in the world around me. And I'll tell you a little story about that later. It's interesting. So on page 4, we also have my action, some of the things, and if you want to do this in your own time, some of the things that you think were existing in 2012 that are commonplace in our life, that didn't exist in 2012, but are commonplace now. And then identify some of the things that you think will be commonplace in 2030. And when we do this in workshops, this is a really challenging exercise. Everybody gets that first bit, identify the things that didn't exist in 2012 that are commonplace in our lives. Now, people get that. But when they start pushing it out to 2030, they struggle. They come up with space travel and honeymoon on the moon and all sorts of stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about this, but what is happening in our world, and the reason this is a good exercise for you to do in your own time, it highlights the amount of change that is happening in our lives. We are living in the greatest period of change in human history. And for those of you who've been on some of my previous seminars, you will have heard me talk about VUCA, right? volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, VUCA. And that's the world we're living in. And if you look back over the last, say, 3, 4, 5 years, we've had unprecedented change. So like if you go back as far as 2020, we had COVID. And COVID really was a catastrophic event worldwide. And I know when we went into lockdown, I'm sitting there going, wow, will our business survive? What happens if I happen to meet somebody that I don't have a mask on? Would I get COVID and die? Those are the sort of things that go through your mind. And then you ask yourself, well, what can I do to control that? And we've seen the war in Ukraine. We see the wars in the Middle East. We see supply chain problems. We see so many things happening, even with all those bushfires in Los Angeles, so many things that are happening in the world today that actually make our world a very uncertain place. Volatile, complex, uncertain, and ambiguous VUCA world. And that causes stressors because people go, gosh, the world's unsafe. Or, gosh, there's all of these negative things happening in the world, and they could affect me. And perhaps they could, perhaps they may not. So how do we actually take ownership? If you go back to that quote of Carl Jung, which is, I'm a very, very big fan of that quote. It's, I'm not what happened to me, I'm what I choose to become. And resilience is around choice. It's looking at the choice that you want to make around the things that are in your life and how you want to live your life. So as Jenny said, we run the biggest coaching business in the country through our National Coaching Center. And if you talk to any of our coaches, and I was talking online to all of our coaches this morning, if you ask them this question, and they'll tell you this, is people don't believe they have control of their lives, or people don't wish to take control of their lives. And in our coaching sessions, that's one of the things that comes up quite often, is that people go, but I don't have control. Well, yes, you do. But it's a question of reframing your thinking to do that. And we're going to talk about that a little later, because that reduces stressors. So let's look at what is resilience. So if we turn to page 5, we've got here a nice little diagram that talks about what resilience is. But the one I love, for any of those who read Winnie the Pooh, and Winnie the Pooh is one of my favorite stories, even now, even now. And in Winnie the Pooh, you got Kanga. And Kanga, there was this great cartoon I saw about resilience using Kanga. And it said, it's not how high I can jump, it's how often I can keep jumping. And that to me summed up resilience. It's not about how high I could jump, it's about how long I could keep jumping. So resilience is the ability to get back up after adversity. Resilient people are able to greet change and difficulty as an opportunity for self-reflection, learning, and growing. So I talked a moment ago about VUCA being a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. And the way that you handle and manage VUCA is, again, one of these acronyms, OODA, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. I was asked the other day, what have I seen as being one of the major trends of 2024, last year? I said, one of the major trends I saw is people's inability to make decisions, which is weird, right? It's strange. In a fast-changing world, people and organizations are making decisions much more slowly. It doesn't make sense, because what happens by the time you get around to making the decision, the situation you're making the decision on has changed. And we all know that a decision made on about 75 to 80% of the information is going to be probably right. I'll give you an example. We are launching on the 24th of February Academy Plus, which is going to be a transformational online platform for all the people we work with. It's big. And when we had a meeting about it a month ago, we had some people who are coaches of ours who come out of major corporates, big organizations. And when we said we're launching on the 24th of February, they said, are you testing it? And I said, no, we're going to launch and learn. We'll test it as we go. And they were amazed because they would, their way of thinking, their paradigm of thinking was you need to test it with participants, test it with clients, come back, have more talks about it. And over drinks a little later, at the end of the day, one of those coaches said to me, she said, it's interesting because she said in the organization I was in before, we would have tested it, and we wouldn't have this launched by October. And we're launching on 24th of February. We'll launch and learn. So part of what I'm talking about here is about taking control, making those decisions, reflecting, learning, and growing. I just disappeared there for a second. So I presume I'm back. Am I, Jenny? I'm still online? I think so.
Yes, you are, Terry.
Good, thank you. And so resilience is the ability to get back up after adversity. Resilient people are able to greet change and difficulty as an opportunity for self-reflection, learning, and growing. After COVID, I was sitting down with a client and we were talking about what we'd done during COVID. We'd changed our business model by about 180 degrees. And he said to me, so what is your resiliency practice? And it was an interesting question because I had never really articulated it as a resiliency practice. And he said, how do you actually deal with all of these things that are happening in your life? And I said, well, ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, ever since I can remember, I've always asked myself one question in every situation I come into: where does the opportunity sit? Where does the opportunity sit? And it's an amazing question because it shifts I think there's the term they call it, the locus of focus. They shift the locus of focus away from the problem that's around you to the opportunities that problem presents. And that is my tool for being resilient. It's about making sure that in any situation, I'm looking for where the opportunity is. What do I need to reflect on? What do I need to learn? What do I need to grow? So we're going to talk about that and some other tools. So a resilient person is flexible, adaptable, able to change and to learn. And I see today a lot of people aren't open to learning. They come out of university and they think they've finished their learning and they may do certain things in the wider world around that, but they often go, but this is how I do things. And you go, that's great, that's fine. But is how you do things relevant to what we are dealing with now? And I had a group of people that I was working with, senior leadership team, and they said, oh, but this is how we do things. And I said, but so you think it's going to work in the future? And they go, well, it's sort of working. I said, well, what I want to do is I want to give you a Nokia clamshell phone. You probably don't remember them, but the little Nokia clamshell phones have got a screen about this big, and they only did texting and phone calls. And I said, you can give me your smartphones, and I'll replace it with one of those. And nobody did. Nobody wanted to. And so that was in technology. So it was an easier shift to go from where we were to where we are today. It's a harder thing when you're saying to people, your opinion, if you've got an opinion and the way you used to do things yourself in your life is the Nokia clamshell, and you need to move to a smartphone thinking in your personal opinions, that's harder for people. You need to be aware of what your vision is, and we'll talk about this a little later. And the key thing here, I think, about resilience, it builds wellness because it shifts your perspective away from what is negative, what is wrong, to what is possible and what you can actually do. And as it says there on page 5, have a problem-solving approach, reframes the situation for a positive outcome. And I think the thing is that you need to notice your emotions. You need to know what is important to you, what is your perspective. And if we turn to page 6, this is one of my favorites around successful resilience and wellness. And as we say in the title of our workbook, Kikaha, stay strong, this is how you build strength for yourself. Now, Stephen Covey wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And the one part of that book I really liked was find your true north. So if you imagine a compass heading, you go, that's my north. Now, I may get blown off as I go through my life. I may get blown off to, I may be heading northeast, or I could even be heading south, but I know I'm not heading north. And my question to myself is always, how do I come back to north? So the question that people always then say to me, how do I find my north? So you can call it your life goal, you can call it your vision. We often in some of our workshops call it your legacy. What do you want people to say about you after you've passed on from this life? What do you want? And today here we want to look at 3 things. Passion, purpose equals your ikigai, right? So what is ikigai? Ikigai is a Japanese word which says, this is my reason for living. This is my purpose. This is who I am. Now, how do you get to that? You get to it through passion and purpose. Now, a word Kiwis love to use in sport is passion. But I can tell you from experience, when I use the word passion in non-sporting things, people go, yeah, maybe. But passion is something I think that's important for us as humans. It's about doing things that we love, things that actually make us come alive, things that we just really enjoy. So one of my passions is what we do in our business. And as Jenny said, one of the key bylines that we have for the business, the best and nothing less. But the core value that drives our business is we make a difference. We make a difference. And that's one of my passions around our business, is that we need to be making a difference. So you need to discover your passion. And often people go, I don't know what my passion is. And you'd be surprised at how many people that we coach, that when we ask them, what are you passionate about? They go, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Oh, I'm probably passionate about my kids. And you go, yeah, that's good. What else? And often people are telling me, or telling our coaches what I'm passionate about externally. I'm passionate about my kids, and that's fantastic. But what are you personally passionate about yourself, right? So it's about what drives you. And then you look at your purpose and you say, what is my purpose in life? Which is, again, often what is going to be my true north? What is it that I want as my legacy? What do I want to be remembered for? Put those 2 together, and then you've got the kind of life that you want to live. Now, it's interesting. I was working the other day with a person, a senior manager, and she said to me, the organization I've been working in, I hate toxic culture. I don't like my job. I've had all of these crises in my life, relationship problems, a whole lot of things. And she'd been made redundant. And my first question to her was, do you want to change these? And she said, yes, I do. And I said, why does it take redundancy to get you to that point? And she goes, oh, because I've been too scared to actually make the changes myself. I said to her, what are you passionate about? She said, I don't know. I can't find any jobs I'm passionate about. And we had a conversation around like we're talking here today. And she emailed me later that day and she said, that was a really revelationary session that we had today, because you made me realize that passion is not something I need to find in a job. Passion is something I need to find in myself. And I rang her and said to her, you're right, because when you find passion in yourself, you will find the job that actually amplifies that. But the passion has to be for yourself. What is your passion? What is your purpose? That gives you your ikigai, your reason to be, your reason for living. So One of my favorite questions that I love asking people in coaching who are trying to find their passion is saying, when you were 5 years of age, what did you want to be when you grow up? What did you want to be when you grew up? And often people sit there, and I had a really great situation a few years ago where this person who was really struggling in the role, and I said, what did you want to be when you grew up? And she said to me, I wanted to be a dancer, and I'm not. I failed. I said, okay, what else did you want to be? And she said, I want to be a singer. And I'm not a singer, so I failed. And I went, so you wanted to be creative? And she goes, yeah, I want to be creative. And I said, so why aren't you creative in your role now? Because this is the elements of your role that I find really creative. And she goes, but I've never looked at my role as being creative. So she went away and did reframing. And as a result, went on to become very, very successful in that role from a position where she was almost quite unsuccessful. So I think it's very important. Write your thoughts down here when you get a moment around what it is that's important to you. Go back and ask yourself, what do you want to be remembered for? That's your legacy, your true north. Once you find that, then focus your life around that in the best way that you can. So the happiest people are the ones who spend the most time in a state of ikigai. So they're the people that are focused on doing what it is in their life that's important to them. And yes, I know people say there's so many things that prevent me from doing that. And that is true too. But start small, work towards it, work towards your north. And guess what? Over time, it will become possible and get bigger and bigger as part of your life. There's an old saying, when one commits totally, all things fall behind it. So I found that in my life, when you commit totally, all things happen to help you achieve that. So build your purpose. And we've been talking about what you want to be remembered for. Write these down here when you have a moment over the weekend or in some of your spare time. What do I want to be remembered for? So imagine you're 105 and you pass away at 105 and you go and sit at your funeral service and somebody's giving a eulogy. What would they be saying about you? What would you want them to say? That's what you want to be remembered for. What is important in my life right now? What's important? What are my values? Right? Write down, what are your values? What do I make? Where do I make an impact in the world around me? Like if I got people around and said, or looked at them or listened in on them or did focus groups and said, what impact do I make? What is it? It could be very small, could be very big, but people do make impacts. And what brings me joy? So this is the second word that Kiwis really struggle with a bit in my experience. Passion's number one when you talk about it outside sport. And the second one that I always find that people, when I say, what brings you joy? People go, ooh. And I had that the case the other day. I was coaching a person and I said to her, what brings you joy? And she thought about it. And then she said to me, I don't know. I don't know. Then she said to me, what brings you joy? I said, well, there's many things that bring me joy, but one of the things that bring me joy, I love going to Sydney to the opera at the Sydney Opera House. And I said, at the interval, I walk out, I buy a glass of champagne, walk out on the deck, I look out at Sydney Harbour, I stand there and go, wow, how lucky am I? How blessed am I? And she goes, oh, that doesn't sound like me. I said, well, no, it's not you, it's me. Find things like that. They're just, for the cost of an opera ticket and a glass of champagne, I find joy. It's not that hard. But you know what the secret is? The secret is being able to find it in the small things. And so we're going to talk about resilience. So my favorite one is on page 8. And resilience, the father of resilience was Dr. Norman Gamasmi, and he did a lot of work and research, but in particular, he did research in a very low decile school in Harlem. It was a very low decile school, lots of kids there who were struggling. But there was one kid who used to turn up every day with a lunchbox, And in the lunchbox, he had 2 pieces of bread, nothing else, nothing on the bread, just 2 pieces of raw bread. And Gillespie got him in and said to him, "Why do you bring 2 slices of bread?" And he says, "Because I'm the same as everybody else." And Gillespie goes, "Can you explain it?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "All the kids sit down and have their sandwiches for lunch." He said, "I sit down and have mine. I have a bread sandwich." And when Gillespie did further research into that, he found that this little boy, who was about 8, his father had left when he was 1 or 2. His mother was alcoholic, on drugs, and she was sort of not a very great mother to him. And so after school, he had part-time jobs where he used to get enough money that he could buy some food for home, but he also bought 1 loaf of sliced bread every week. And then he'd take 2 slices out every day, put it in his lunchbox, go to school, so he could be the same as everybody else. And we go back to that quote from Carl Jung, right? Carl Jung's quote was about, "It's what I choose to be." And this little boy, who then created this whole science around resilience, this little boy, he chose to be the same as everybody else. He didn't choose to say, "I'm so disadvantaged," or "so this and so that," even though he was. He chose his life. And so that was the bread sandwich. And I love this story because it is at the essence of what builds resilience. It's how we choose. So negative thoughts such as "the world's out there to get me" create victim mentality, which prevents individuals from obtaining or maintaining resilience. So part of this is how we think. And I think the key thing that when we start managing our resilience, we start changing things around us. The world around us changes, stressors change. Before building resilience, you can see there at the bottom of page 8, is that people can feel fragile, disconnected, self-critical, sad, difficulties with sleep, health, fulfillment. But after building resilience, when people find opportunities, they find the ability to take care of their nutrition, their life, things begin to happen for them. And one of the key things that I think that's important that I've been working on with teams, high performance teams, is one of the things people love to set goals, right? And so one of the things they love to do is set goals. Now, goals don't work, really, I don't think. What works is micro behavior changes create habits. Habits create different behaviors, and behaviors enable us to achieve goals. But by setting the goal without actually looking at our micro behaviors and our habits, we will probably always struggle to achieve our goal. So if you want to build a resilience practice for yourself and to amplify and change your wellness, then what you need to do is to start looking at the small stuff that you need to change in your life. Because you're not going to wake up one morning and go, "Great, well, I'm going to be like Terry because I just like what Terry's doing," because you'll probably struggle with that because I've been doing it for like 40 years. So again, it's building those micro actions that begin to build behaviors, and the behaviors then enable you to create habits that deliver on goals. So some of the benefits we've got on page 9 around resilience is that it helps you get adaptability in adversity. So going back to what I said is I have always asked myself the question, where does the opportunity sit here? And when we went through COVID, trust me, we were staring down the barrel of a gun because we didn't know how our business would go through to the other side of COVID. And I don't know if any of you can remember or choose to remember back then, but it was a time of big uncertainty and probably a lot of fearfulness. And we sat down and we talked about it, and we set 2 battle plans, one till the end of July and one to the end of December that year. And we planned out what we were going to do in that and how we would change it, what were the opportunities that were there, and we hit all of those targets and we transformed our business. I think the second part is really important, is around courage. And it's courage and uncertainty because, again, that example I gave you about COVID, was we were sitting there going, well, we're not sure what's going to happen. Like the world was a very uncertain place. And I think what you need to do is then rely on both yourself, trust yourself, and rely on the wider grouping around you, your whānau or your support group around you. Make sure you've got people there who are on your side, supporting you, working with you, and who are positive. Positive. Who we surround ourselves with is who we become. It enables you to build meaningful connection to others. It enables you to build creativity in an uncertain, complex, and changing world. And it's interesting, I mentioned to you, we're launching this new online platform, which people have said to us, why? And I'm going, well, because that is the future. That's what needs to be done for us to grow our business substantially in the future and take it international. That takes courage, it takes creativity. And hey, if we fail, we fail. But, you know, we will never wonder about what we could have done by not trying. We talked about being present. You know, I talked about people texting when they're walking. Select where you place your attention. So like I've seen many people sit there for hours. They will sit there for hours scrolling through social media feeds. Select where you place your attention because you have a limited amount of time in your day. Make it work for you. Make it valuable. Make it really impactful. Like if you have kids, set time when you can really connect with them. Sitting in front of TV and having a chat about what's on the TV is not a connection. Well, it is a connection, but it's not a quality connection. And so it's like 2 weeks ago, my daughter, she's gone through a challenging year. She's got really good artistic ability, and she's also very clever. But anyway, I said to her, look, I want to spend a day with you, and I want to help you get back to your creative side. So I found an artist, and we spent a day with the artist in the artist studio doing some painting. And on the way back, she said to me, you know, that's the best day I think I've spent in my life. And so to me, that was really cool because that was me placing my attention in a place that mattered, that really mattered. Number 6, and this is one of my favorites, create a mindset of possible. So one of the things that I often will get people I'm coaching to do, and it's a good exercise for you to do now or tonight or whenever you get a moment, but don't leave it too long. Do it today if you can. Find yourself a quiet space where you can't get interrupted and write down a list of all the things in your life from the time you could think, time you was 3 years of age, to now that people said weren't possible to achieve, or the things you're really, really proud of achieving, or the things that were they're too difficult to achieve, but you achieved them anyway. And every one of you will have things in your life that you have actually done that were considered to be perhaps impossible, difficult, challenging, or things that you overcame to actually achieve them. Write them down. I do it about every year. I sit down and do it again. I know them all, but I write them down again because what it does, it focuses me on, yeah, wow, I remember people did tell me I couldn't achieve that and I did it. So it's creating that mindset of the possible because we live in a world where everybody tells us the impossible, tells us the negative stuff. I don't watch TV, but if you did watch TV, I would imagine if you watch the TV news, my mum used to watch it and it was pretty depressing. So I think, find yourself a tool like that you can sit there and go, wow, yeah, so-and-so told me when I was 8, I couldn't do this, but I worked at it and achieved it. And again, all you're doing is you're training yourself to look at things in a different way. You're training yourself to believe in yourself. You're training yourself to think differently about the world around you. Because all of us, in our own way, have achieved things that probably were difficult, challenging, or were perhaps thought to be impossible. Now, if you want a really simple exercise you could take in your own time is what we've got on page 10, which is what is stress? Now, this is completely non-scientific, so don't imagine it as highly scientific. But it's a really good tool for you to go through and just mark how you see things in your life. Just mark down the ratings and then add them up and see where you sit, we on the scoring scale at the bottom. As I say, it's not scientific, but it's a good way to actually say, gosh, maybe there's some things I need to change in my life. And like we talk about stress or stressors. Now there's good stress and bad stress, so the bad stress is when you feel out of control, when you feel you can't define the end of it, you feel lost. That's a bad stress. Good stress is like if you ever look at a kid looking forward to Christmas, that's good stress. They're stressed about how many days we've got to go to Christmas, and they want to wake up early in the morning, get their presents, and it's all those kind of things. If you're looking at kids, so that's a positive stress that we have, and we all have both of them. So where does some of our negative stress come from? And negative stress comes from often how we frame and seeing the world. So in our conscious mind, we can handle two things at once. Like you can listen to me now and work out what you're going to have for dinner tonight. Our subconscious mind handles maybe up to 7 things, but probably typically somewhere between 5 and 6 things. And when we see more than 5 or 6 things in our subconscious, we say 20 things, we get really stressed because we can't comprehend it. So unless you're used to taking control of things in your life, when things happen to you, you will quickly go beyond the 6 things. You'll go to 10 or 20 and go, oh my goodness, there's so much things I need to deal with here, and I don't know how I'm going to handle them. And a really interesting example is if you watch somebody coming back from holiday, and I've done this, you watch them coming back to their desk. And let's say their desk is now sort of this deep in different stuff on their desk. They'll do 2 things. They'll walk in, look at their desk, and go and get a coffee and talk to people, because that's their way of handling this overload. Other people will sit down and put stuff into piles. And if you look at those piles, you probably find there's no more than 6 piles. The piles may not make a lot of sense, but there's 6 piles. And another way to do it is to write them down. Write them on a piece of paper, write them down, because then you're actually articulating them out, and then you can group them. You can group them into no more than 5 or 6 groupings. And the moment you do that, you'll find that actually some of these things start to solve themselves. That's reframing. And we're going to talk in our next sessions about, the key things of managing these stressors, understanding how we understand things we can control, reframing, shifting our thinking. And that's a skill that we're not generally taught at school. We've taught to actually think things in a linear fashion, not challenge things. And I was fascinated the other day. I watched this video about Steve Jobs, and you may have seen the video, but it's about the ad campaign that Steve Jobs brought into Apple when he came back after John Scully, who had come in. And Steve Jobs was bringing Apple back to its core, which was about think differently. Think differently. And the message, I suppose, if you want to build resilience, is to think differently about the things in your world. You may be very happy with them, and that's good, but challenge them. Ask yourself the question, if I was going to change something in my life, and I was going to change the way I think about it, what would I do? How would I do it? If you want a very good tip on how to start this, it's probably not a popular tip, but it's go into your wardrobe and throw out everything you haven't worn in the last 6 months. Put it in a bag and give it to charity. Because so many people hang on to things and go, oh, yep, those bell-bottom trousers, they'll come back into fashion and I'll be right in the forefront of fashion, which of course you won't be, and probably they still don't fit, etc., etc. So we hang on to stuff and we rationalize the hanging on. So I'll tell you a true story. I was working probably 3 or 4 years ago with a senior manager who was really struggling, and we couldn't get past go. We couldn't get past go, really. So in the second session, I said to this person, I said, look, what you need to do on the way home tonight is buy yourself a really nice bottle of wine, maybe buy two. And then on Saturday morning, this was on a Thursday, I said, on Saturday morning, I want you to pour yourself a glass of wine, go into your wardrobe and throw out everything you haven't worn in the last 6 months. And if you don't drink wine, maybe a nice cup of green tea. But anyway, she said to me, this sounds like a great plan. So anyway, to cut a very long story short, on the following Wednesday, she came in for another coaching session. And if I hadn't known she was coming in, I would probably not have recognized her. She came in and she goes, what do you think? And I went, wow. She said, I went in and I did what you said. And then she said, I got carried away and I threw everything in my wardrobe out. And I went out on Sunday and I bought some new stuff and I'm wearing it now. And I said, what do you think? She said, it's amazing. She said, it just shifted my thinking. And she took off. Today, she's in a really great role, a role that she'd always wanted, simply because she had broken that barrier of hanging on to what was, let's call it, the past. And that example was clothes. But we have the same thing with ideas, with perceptions, with attitudes, with the way we think. We have it in so many parts of our lives. And so my suggestion to you is that if you are looking to shift and change and to look at different things, then pick something like that you will want to be able to do that begins to start the change. Now, I mentioned earlier, micro habits or micro actions begin to build habits. Habits change behavior and behaviors create goals. And so, as I said, I've been doing a lot of work with high performance teams, and this is the core of high performance. You don't actually start in high performance by saying, that's the goal, that's what we're going to achieve. You start by actually saying, these are the things that we need to start working on, the micro actions, create the habits. So I was working with a person the other day, and he said to me, yeah, I want to lose weight. And I said, so what are you thinking about? He said, I've set myself a goal. I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week. I said, oh, that's great. Do you think it'll work? He said, I'm not sure. He said, I did the same thing last year. And I said, did it work? He went, no. I said, why not? He said, I got down to doing it 3 times a week and then 2 times a week. And then I thought, I'm failing. And I said, well, if you set a goal for 4 times a week and you're doing it 3 or 2 times a week, then you're not succeeding. And he goes, yeah. I said, well, what about you actually say to yourself, you want to build a habit of moving every day? And he goes, well, how's that going to work? I said, well, if you're moving every day, it's very simple. You do not have to go to the gym every day. You could go for a walk. You could jump out up and down on the spot for 5 minutes. That's moving. But I said, I promise you one thing. Once you get into the habit of moving every day, you will start to think, well, I could actually do this better at the gym, or I could actually get more advantage by going to the gym. So now it's not an imposition. It is just a motivator around possibilities that you can create. So he's off doing that, and I will promise you that by the end of this year, he'll be going to the gym probably 3 or 4 times a week, because he's now built a behavior around that. So that sort of wraps up today. Next session, next week, we're going to talk about the circle of influence and control, which is on page 11. And we're going to talk about stresses and the impact that they have on our lives, how we change them, how we look at them differently. And one of the key things that we're going to talk about is making choice. None of these things happen by hope. Hope does not change our lives. What changes our lives is being able to take actions around them. And we're going to talk about that, particularly around how you manage your stresses. And again, you'll hear us talk a lot in these 4 seminars around reframing. It's how you think. And so I hope that you found today to be valuable. Any comments or suggestions or queries or questions you've got, please pop them in the chat. Do we have anything there at all, Jenny? So we can, no, I don't think we have. So we must have a group of happy, satisfied people. So, but if you do, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat or email to Jenny. Very happy to have a chat to you, talk about what it is that you have a question about. So that really wraps us up for today. Look forward to seeing you same time, same place next week. Thanks a lot.